Hello, everybody. Good evening. My name is Fumi Inyoda, and this is Public Eye Live. It's another Friday. I'm happy to be here. I'm sure that you are happy to be here. And now, more than any other time, every day that we are well and fine, wherever we are in the world, I think that all of us are fine and thankful. I'm thankful to all of you who are joining already. Thank you for joining. Today's show in particular is focused around the idea of displacements. You know, sometimes we move from country to country. Sometimes something happens that within your own country, you might become displaced. That has been Nigeria's story since the breakout of the insurgency terrorism in the northern part of Nigeria, northeastern part of Nigeria. Before then, there were many other insurgencies and militancy that has meant that people left their homes or were forced to leave their homes. So at a time like this, what does one do when you are already displaced from your home? Or if you were traveling outside of Nigeria and couldn't get back before the borders were locked, what are your options? These are some of the conversations that we'll go on today. But first and foremost, I'll be talking with a survivor of coronavirus, somebody who is, she's really special. You will meet her later on when we start our conversation. The one thing the three of us on this show today have in common is television. My first guest is Diana Odeli. In the 80s, her voice and her face defined television. You remember her from NTA2, Channel 5, broadcaster, guitarist, singer, writer. She's based in the UK now, and she caught coronavirus, but has survived. She's beaten it. You don't look a day older than 28.
Oh, thank you.
And you turned 60 recently. I mean, your 60th birthday on any day would be spectacular, but particularly at this time is an amazing, amazing feat. Congratulations, Auntie.
Thank you.
We'll talk about the virus, and then we'll talk about you having been an IJB in Nigeria in the 80s and ending up on television and radio. But first I will ask, how did you know that you had coronavirus?
Initially, I didn't know that I had it. I already have what they call underlying issues. I have, I've had systemic lupus for over 40 years. So all the time I was in NTA and smiling on TV and everything, I had systemic lupus. And so when I started feeling a bit poorly, I just thought it was a lupus flare-up. And the signs and symptoms are very, very similar to what COVID-19 brings. And me, knowing me, and people who know me, once I know I'm getting a flare-up, I think that's when I go into overdrive and I want to do this. I become more than a superwoman. So I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to go here, I want to go there. So I did all the things I wanted to do, which involved a trip driving outside London. I did that. And I still wouldn't accept. In fact, I didn't think, that's the truth. I didn't think about COVID. It was when I got back from my trip out from outside London, and I called the lupus emergency number, and I spoke with a nurse. The nurse usually answers the phone, and she said, all right, I'll get a doctor to phone you. A doctor phoned me a short while later and asked for the symptoms I was experiencing at the time. And I told her the doctor, and she said, it sounds like you've got the virus. And my first reaction was, I don't have coronavirus. This is a flare-up. This is me telling the doctor. And so I had already convinced myself that I was having a flare-up of lupus. And then the doctor said, well, I can't ask you to come into the clinic because we don't have protective equipment to protect them in the outpatients clinic. And if I do have the virus, then I'd be passing it on to them. Anyway, she said, look, see how you are.
This was in the UK. For those of us watching who don't know where you live, this was in the UK, in London specifically, wasn't it?
In London, yes. Yeah. In South London, actually. So she said, if I start to feel even, any worse, call NHS number 111. We called that number, you know, no, we couldn't get through. Obviously, everybody was calling that number. And then I think I was at home with my younger daughter, and by this time I was getting really poorly, and I started throwing up. So by this time I was bad. So she called for an ambulance and then called her sister, her big sister, and said, look, you need to come home. The ambulance crew came. The paramedic examined me, stethoscope and everything, you know, my chest, my lungs, and said, oh, you're all right. You haven't got the illness, the virus, you're fine. We'll just put it down to a bad case of the lupus. I went, oh.
I mean, how could
all
they
right,
possibly say you didn't have the virus when they didn't test you?
because one of the symptoms is your breathing. Your breathing goes out of the window. You know, you'd be struggling to breathe. You know, and shallow breathing and all that. I had it. My breathing was a bit shallow, but it wasn't major, I would say. The following day or 2 days later, I can't remember. I really don't remember anything of the time frame in all of this. But I remember getting to A&E, the casualty. And when the doctor examined me, same stethoscope, my chest and my lungs, the first thing the doctor said was, you've got a crackling sound in your lungs, which is now symptomatic of COVID. So they sent me off for a chest x-ray. I can remember them saying, yes, they could see something on the x-ray. Okay, so they gave me antibiotics. They gave me a bag of fluid and sent me on my merry way, sent me back home.
What?
Yes, I wasn't tested. I wasn't tested for COVID at all. I was not given a test. I ended up going to casualty 3 times. 3 times. It was the 3rd time after I'd spoken with my lupus consultant. He was really concerned because I took my blood pressure at home, here at home. And my blood pressure was fine, but my pulse rate was not good. It was racing. It was well over 100. Can't remember what it was, 110, I think it was. He said, no, you need to be in the hospital. You need to get to casualty. So I got to casualty. And there was a wonderful, wonderful doctor there. She looked after me, made sure I had another chest x-ray, made sure I had fluid immediately, because by this time I was completely dehydrated. I had one of the, should I say, rarer sides of COVID-19, which is vomiting and diarrhea, which was constant. So there was no fluid in me. The nurse couldn't find a vein. All my veins had collapsed. The hospital was really busy that evening, so all my treatment, believe it or not, was taking place in the corridor. Eventually, I got a cubicle, but there were no beds on the ward to take me to, so they had to leave me in the cubicle all night long. In the morning, I think it was morning, I was then transferred to a ward. I was swabbed for COVID and for MRSA. MRSA is another bug that is a bacterial bug, and they test you for that if you're going to be admitted into hospital. And much, much later in the day, the doctor came back and said, well, your results are in, and I have to tell you, you've tested positive for COVID-19. I went, way! I don't know why. And I thought, no, because I know that now I know what was wrong with me.
Yeah.
Now I know what to say to certain people who are going to pray, so we know what we're praying for or praying against, as it were. Anyway, I was sent home. Believe it or not, I tested positive.
You went.
Me, I'm confused.
Hang on. So they have a history. They know your history. They know your underlying health condition history. They tested you. Actually, you didn't get that test until this long process, including 3 times.
Yeah.
trying to find out if this was what was happening. And after you got the initial treatment, you were sent back to your house.
So I said, whoa, 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 wait a minute. You're sending me home? They said, yes. The doctor said, well, your SATs are good. Your oxygen level right now is good. Your blood pressure is good. I said, but I'm ill. And the doctor actually admitted that he had seen he had attended to so many patients who have this COVID-19, but he hadn't met anyone yet who has lupus and everything else that follows with all the rest of the illnesses in me. He hasn't met anyone yet with lupus and COVID-19. So I said, well, shouldn't that be a reason for you to keep me in here? He said, well, your oxygen levels are all right. I said, fine. Don't I get any medication? Because by this time I'd been given different kinds of antibiotics. He said, no, you'll be fine. So I came back home. I was brought back home in an ambulance anyway. But after that, things went downhill. I started getting, I was, what's the word I've used to describe it? I was gravely ill. Now, I'm sure you know what that means.
I do.
I was gravely ill. My two daughters were here with me. When I knew that I was kind of lucid, I was praying to God to please protect them so they didn't get this awful, terrible illness, this disease, this virus. I was ill. I didn't know what day it was from one day to the next. I didn't know what time it was. To be honest with you, I didn't really know anything. And there was one night I knew I was slipping away. I was going. I was dying. I knew. And if anybody out there wants to know how I knew, I know because it's happened to me. I've been on that journey like about 3 times before. So I knew it. And
I'm sorry to interrupt because I want to, it's a lot, it's heavy to listen to. But I want to make sure I get certain things out that I'm really sorry you went through this. I'm really,
Thank you. I'm good.
really sorry that you went through this. So you were in essence alone at home with your daughters, basically just powering through this horrible disease. Was there any treatment prescribed to you for you to, how did you manage it? What was the treatment? What were you meant to be doing alone at home by yourself?
Good question. First and foremost, the treatment, the medication I have that I take regularly for the lupus, I was told to stop it because it is an immune suppressant drug. So I had to stop it. And it's because I'm taking that drug, which is one of the reasons why I was able to catch COVID, just like that. Apart from that, the other drugs that I take as part of my regular drug maintenance, for the other illnesses as well, I couldn't even swallow them because I couldn't even drink water. Every time I tried to drink water, it would all come back. The only medication that I have been taking up until this week actually was paracetamol, or should I say Calpol, because it's an oral suspension. It's what you give to babies, what you give to little children, because I couldn't swallow paracetamol. I'd put a tablet in my mouth to try and swallow it, and I would just vomit again. So that was it.
How long? Because basically your immunity, you fought this on your own, basically. That's what it means.
With the help of God.
With the help of God. You fought this on your own.
God
basically.
did it.
I know that in the UK, as it is all over the world, particularly in the UK, that became kind of like the epicenter for Europe, that the system was overwhelmed itself. But one of the things that became an issue, and I know you as a broadcaster, this will resonate with you because it's the kind of issue you would have taken up, that it would appear that there's a disproportionate amount of people, Black people, or just BAME generally, who are dying, who are infected and dying from COVID. Is there a suggestion that they are not able to maybe access as good health care as non-BAME might have been able to access? Or is this just a result of, why do you think it is anyway? There's been a lot of theories put forward. Why do you think this is?
There have been a lot of theories about that. They've been saying it for quite a few number of weeks now, I think. But I think it was yesterday or day before yesterday, one of the scientists was trying to disprove that it's not really Black and ethnic minority people who are actually more susceptible to this COVID-19. I said, there's one question I need to know. Knowing fully well of my history, my medical history, which is why when anything happens to me, I insist on going back to that particular hospital. I don't go to another hospital. I don't like going to another hospital. Knowing my particular history, my question was, why was I discharged? So I don't know what's going on in the hospitals. I don't know why so many Black people are dying.
Do you think if you'd been white, if you'd been British white, because you are British, you've been living there since very young. If you were white British, do you think
I was born here.
With that same history,
I can't. It would be very easy for me to say yes to that question, but I can't say yes to that question because I really don't know. Perhaps it was because of the people who were in charge on that particular day, or maybe because my oxygen levels at that time were good. Maybe my pulse rate had even come down because I'd had a second bag of fluid. Because, like I said to you, I was completely dehydrated. You know, maybe they were looking at those stats and realized, okay, she can manage at home. I don't know.
Yeah, I can imagine how difficult it would have been to do anything given the lockdown. And the lockdown in London was very, very strictly enforced. I did agree that the conversation with you was only going to be 20 minutes because you still are recovering, you still are recuperating. Yes, but I would like to have a further conversation with you in future, particularly about, your career. I mean, you've led such a, I haven't seen you since 2014. I don't talk about it much, but I will talk about it eventually. We have a lot in common. I know what it is like to smile for the camera when you're very sick. I know that. And so there's a lot to talk about, and I promise you we will have this conversation, especially because I know you are here, you are going nowhere. But I wanted to ask you what you would say to people who have concerns. People stay at home right now, or some are already beginning to move in cities where there's some easing, and they worry that they might get the virus. What would you say to people?
Well, I'll say listen to government advice. If you're told to stay at home, stay at home. Play with your children. If you haven't got children, play with your husband or your wife. Sit down, talk to each other, watch films, read books, keep your minds occupied. I am a Christian. My faith, my firm faith in God has given me peace for I think, 10 weeks now that I've been poorly. Believe it or not, I will say that, and I will say it anywhere in the world. My firm faith in God has given me peace. Even when I thought I was dying, when I knew I was dying, let me rephrase that. When I knew I was dying, I just cried out to the Lord. And I gave him 2 reasons why I think I should still remain. And here I am. Yes, I think I look absolutely fabulous for 60. But, I've put some makeup on, some powder on, so I can face the cameras. But,
you always look fabulous.
Bless you, sweetheart. Bless you. Don't get too close to people. You don't need to interact with anybody at this time. Don't go visiting people. And if you yourself are not feeling very well, please don't let people come to your home. Don't let people come visit you. And you must not go out to see anybody else.
I
Thank
must
you.
say thank you to you. I mean, I heard you when
Thank
you
you.
say that that's 10 weeks. That's over 3 months of being very ill.
Yeah.
And here you are. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just such an incredible, inspiring story. And you are truly
Thank you.
inspirational. Thank you for sharing
Thank
the
you.
story with us.
Thank you
Please
very
stay
much for
well.
me.
I
I
look
will.
forward to seeing you in London or Lagos,
Yes.
at the
As soon as the
end,
lockdown is over.
as soon as the lockdown is over. Thank you very much.
Definitely. Thank you, darling.
Bye.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.